If the Death Star had destroyed Dantooine, the consequences would resonate through the galaxy in unexpected ways, not least because of the irony that Dantooine was a ruse. When Princess Leia Organa misled Grand Moff Tarkin and Darth Vader into believing that the rebel base was located on Dantooine, her intention was to buy time and protect the true base on Yavin 4. Had the Empire acted on that information immediately and obliterated Dantooine, they would have unleashed unimaginable destruction on an empty world, further exposing the moral depravity of their regime while achieving little in terms of tactical gains. The first and most obvious repercussion would be the sheer futility of the act. Dantooine, while historically significant and hosting remnants of ancient Jedi outposts, was largely abandoned by the time of the Galactic Civil War. The Rebel Alliance had moved on, leaving behind little more than ruins and faint traces of their presence. The Empire, in its hubris and reliance on the Death Star as a symbol of ultimate power, might have rushed to deploy the superlaser without verifying the intelligence provided by Leia. The destruction of an uninhabited planet would expose their lack of foresight and strategic acumen, providing a propaganda opportunity for the rebels to highlight the Empire's indiscriminate cruelty. This act of destruction would ripple through the galaxy, affecting public perception of the Empire. Unlike Alderaan, which was a populous and influential world, Dantooine's destruction would not carry the same weight in terms of direct loss of life. However, it would demonstrate the Empire's willingness to obliterate any world, regardless of its strategic importance or population. For many neutral systems and those still debating their allegiance, such an act might serve as a turning point, convincing them that the Empire's tyranny knew no bounds. Even those inclined to support imperial rule for the sake of stability might reconsider their stance in the face of such reckless and unwarranted aggression. From the perspective of the Rebel Alliance, the destruction of Dantooine could be a bittersweet stroke of fortune. On one hand, the loss of Dantooine, despite being abandoned, might lend weight to Leia's falsehood, temporarily diverting the Empire's attention from Yavin 4. The rebels might seize this window of opportunity to consolidate their forces, relocate key resources, or even launch a counteroffensive. On the other hand, the realization that their deception had led to the destruction of a planet, even an empty one, might weigh heavily on Leia and her compatriots. The ethical dilemma of having inadvertently caused such destruction could deepen the rebels' resolve to end the Empire's reign but also underscore the personal sacrifices inherent in their cause. The destruction of Dantooine might also serve to embolden Imperial dissidents and those working covertly to undermine the Empire. Figures such as Mon Mothma or Bail Organa could use the event to rally support for the rebellion, framing the Empire's actions as proof of its growing desperation and moral bankruptcy. Smugglers, bounty hunters, and mercenaries, often motivated more by pragmatism than ideology, might begin to view the rebels as a more viable alternative to the Empire, swayed by the latter's overreach. Galactic politics would likely shift as a result. The destruction of Alderaan was a stark warning that even influential core worlds were not immune to the Empire's wrath. The destruction of Dantooine, in contrast, would underscore that no world, however remote or unassuming, was beyond the Empire's reach. This dual message of boundless power and capricious cruelty might polarize factions within the galaxy even further. Planets like Ryloth, Sullust, and Mon Cala, which were already sympathetic to the rebel cause, might intensify their support, offering ships, soldiers, and resources to the Alliance. Meanwhile, systems under Imperial control could see increased resistance, with local insurgencies emboldened by the realization that the Empire's actions could unify disparate groups against it. The internal dynamics of the Empire would also be affected. The Death Star was not merely a weapon. It was a symbol of the Emperor's vision of absolute control. For it to be deployed in a manner that achieved no tangible strategic objective would sow seeds of doubt among Imperial officers and bureaucrats. Figures like Grand Admiral Thrawn or even Vader himself might question the wisdom of such a move, leading to fractures within the Empire's command structure. Palpatine's reliance on fear as a tool for governance depended on the perception of infallibility. A misstep like destroying an empty planet might chip away at that veneer of omnipotence, especially among those who already harbored doubts about the Death Star's utility. Culturally and socially, the destruction of Dantooine could become a rallying cry for the oppressed. Artists, poets, and historians might immortalize the event as a symbol of imperial excess, weaving it into the broader narrative of resistance. Tales of the lost world of Dantooine could circulate, serving as both a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and an inspiration for those fighting against tyranny. For the common citizens of the galaxy, the event might bring home the reality of the Empire's brutality in a way that political discourse or propaganda never could. The psychological impact on Leia and the rebel leaders would be profound. Leia, in particular, might struggle with guilt over having misled the Empire, even though her actions were necessary to protect Yavin 4 and the broader rebel cause. This inner conflict could deepen her character, making her more resolute in her mission, but also more acutely aware of the stakes involved. Her leadership might take on a more somber tone, reflecting the weight of her decisions and their consequences. For the galaxy at large, the destruction of Dantooine would be a turning point, not because of what was lost, but because of what it represented. A remote, abandoned world would become a testament to the Empire's arrogance and the lengths it would go to maintain control. In the end, the destruction of Dantooine would likely achieve the opposite of what the Empire intended, sowing seeds of rebellion and uniting the galaxy against a common enemy. The act would stand as a reminder that even the most ruthless of regimes could be undone by its own hubris. Continuing from the foundation of Dantooine's destruction, the broader ramifications would echo deeply into the Galactic Civil War's progression, affecting military, strategic, and symbolic dimensions of the conflict. From a strategic standpoint, the Empire's reliance on overwhelming force in the form of the Death Star would highlight a fundamental flaw in their doctrine. The Death Star, while a technological marvel, was an expensive and singular asset. Its deployment to destroy an empty world like Dantooine would be viewed as a gross misallocation of resources. The Rebel Alliance, by contrast, operated with agility and minimal resources, adapting quickly to changing circumstances. The loss of Dantooine might even demonstrate to the rebels the efficacy of misinformation and guerrilla tactics, encouraging them to lean further into asymmetrical warfare to exploit the Empire's inflexibility. This act of destruction would also deepen divisions among the Imperial leadership. Figures like Tarkin, who championed the doctrine of fear, might double down on their belief in the Death Star's value as a psychological weapon. Others, however, might see the futility of its use against Dantooine as evidence of its impracticality. Such dissent could sow mistrust within the Empire's upper echelons, potentially leading to power struggles or even subtle sabotage of the Death Star project from within. The galaxy's civilian populations, already weary of Imperial rule, would interpret Dantooine's destruction as yet another reason to distrust the Empire. Unlike Alderaan, which was a core world with a strong cultural presence, Dantooine was a distant and relatively obscure outer rim planet. Its destruction would reinforce the idea that the Empire's wrath extended to all corners of the galaxy, no matter how remote or insignificant. The psychological toll of living under such a regime might compel more people to support the rebellion, either directly through active participation or indirectly by refusing to cooperate with Imperial authorities. Among those already inclined toward rebellion, the destruction of Dantooine could become a potent rallying point. Leia and other rebel leaders might seize the moment to highlight the Empire's brutality, using it to galvanize new recruits and forge stronger alliances. The Mon Calamari, whose fleet would later play a critical role in the rebel cause, might be swayed to contribute their ships and expertise sooner, accelerating the alliance's buildup of military power. On the galactic stage, the destruction of Dantooine might also prompt neutral systems to reconsider their positions. Many systems remained unaffiliated during the Galactic Civil War, preferring to avoid entanglement in a seemingly unwinnable conflict. However, the Empire's decision to destroy an abandoned planet would likely underscore the futility of appeasement. Such an act would serve as a stark reminder that neutrality offered no protection against the Empire's reach. This realization might drive previously hesitant systems into the arms of the Rebel Alliance, tipping the balance of power. The rebellion's leadership, particularly Mon Mothma and Leia, would face the dual challenge of capitalizing on the propaganda value of Dantooine's destruction while grappling with the moral complexities of the situation. Leia's deception, while necessary, would weigh heavily on her conscience, shaping her approach to future decisions. This inner turmoil might strengthen her resolve to dismantle the empire and ensure that such sacrifices were not in vain. Similarly, Mon Mothma's diplomatic skills would be crucial in framing the narrative for potential allies, emphasizing the necessity of collective resistance against imperial tyranny. The destruction of Dantooine would also influence the Rebel Alliance's military strategy. With Yavin 4 temporarily safe from discovery, the rebels could regroup and focus on building their forces. The reprieve might allow them to develop new technologies, train additional personnel, and refine their tactics. The lessons learned from Dantooine's destruction could inform their future operations, particularly in terms of counterintelligence and misinformation. In the long term, Dantooine's destruction would take on a mythic quality in the collective memory of the galaxy. Stories of the empty world annihilated by the Death Star would circulate widely, serving as both a cautionary tale and a symbol of defiance. Cultural expressions of resistance, songs, holovids, and literature might immortalize the event, ensuring that its legacy endured. For the rebels, it would be a reminder of the stakes of their fight and the sacrifices required to achieve victory. Ultimately, the destruction of Dantooine, while a tactical misstep for the Empire, would become a pivotal moment in the Galactic Civil War. It would expose the Empire's reliance on fear and brute force, rally the galaxy against its oppression, and underscore the resilience and ingenuity of the Rebel Alliance. In their quest for domination, the Empire would inadvertently strengthen the very forces they sought to suppress, proving that even the most formidable regimes are vulnerable to their own excesses.